Okay, the next item of business is Stage 3 proceedings for the Education Scotland Bill. In dealing with the amendments, members should have the bill as amended at Stage 2, that is SP Bill 49A, the revised Marshall's list, the grouping of amendments. The division bell will sound and proceedings will be suspended for around 5 minutes. For the first division, the period of voting for that first division will be 30 seconds. Thereafter, I'll allow a voting period of 1 minute for the first division after a debate. Members who wish to speak in the debate on any group of amendments should press the Request to Speak buttons or enter RTS in the chat function as soon as possible after the group has been called. Members should now refer to the marshalled list of amendments. Before we get underway, I also wish to remind members that the length of time needed to consider this afternoon's amendment proceedings reflects the timetabling motion proposed by the Bureau and agreed to by Parliament yesterday afternoon. The motion is based on the assumption raised with business managers prior to Stage 3 proceedings in the usual way that contributions from members with a right to speak in each group would last up to 5 minutes. The timetabling motion also allows time for other contributions, the disposal of amendments and for the Cabinet Secretary to speak and respond to amendments. The timing lines agreed in the motion give a guide to how to allow steady progress through the proceedings, and I'd encourage members to be mindful of the agreed timetable during this afternoon's proceedings. That said, the position that we reached last night means that I will now exercise my discretion under Rule 9.8.4a subsection C to allow debate on the first group today to continue beyond the next time limit. With that, we move on to grouping 16, involvement of teachers, college staff and others in inspection matters. I call Amendment 29 in the name of Stephen Kerr, grouped with amendments as shown in the groupings. I point out that if Amendment 43, previously debated in Group 12, independence of the Chief Inspector, is agreed to, I cannot call Amendments 239 and 240 due to a preemption. Stephen Kerr to move Amendment 29 and speak to other amendments in the group.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I understand the Minister for Parliamentary Business is having kittens about how long I take to deliver my speeches. But I would point out to the Chamber that since most of the members of this Chamber, most of the MSPs voting on this, of course I'll give way to the Minister. This will be deducted, I assume, from my allocated time.
I just rise to point out I don't think it's just me that has that perspective.
Stephen Kerr.
Well, I'm sure that anyone watching, and I would qualify that, anyone who's watching, will be interested to see how much the SNP do not want this bill to be scrutinised. The reality is it should be scrutinised. We have a duty as members of this Parliament to scrutinise the bills that come before us, and that is exactly what I intend to do. And any attempt to curtail or constrain the debate that will follow this afternoon, I think, is entirely counterproductive, because it will only feed the growing reputation this Parliament has for performative scrutiny and predetermined outcomes. Well, if you think it is performative to seek to improve...
Point of order, Patrick Harvey.
I'm sorry, Presiding Officer, but I think our hearts are all sinking at the idea of a repeat performance. I'm sure the member thinks this is very funny, but is there anything in standing orders that requires him to speak to the amendments in the group, rather than to make other random points that take up time and tire all our patience?
Thank you, Mr Harvey. I think I have made clear how the Chair will intend to proceed this afternoon in accordance with the timetabling motion that was agreed by all of Parliament yesterday afternoon. It is for members to speak to amendments, but they may well wish to draw on other points in so doing. Stephen Kerr, please continue.
Harvey could take up the time of the Chamber to make a point about me making points that are not relevant to an amendment. It's a ridiculous point of order. The reality is that every one of the amendments brought yesterday by opposition members from all opposition parties was tabled in were all tabled in good faith. Not a single one of the amendments that was put yesterday or spoken to yesterday was designed to wreck the bill. It was designed to make this bill, which is a poor bill, a better bill, to give it substance, to make it matter, to honour the voices of teachers, learners and parents who have spent years crying out for change. And this is the only bill that we've had in this Parliament that seeks to change the education system to the better, and I doubt whether this bill will, unless it's seriously amended, and we are not making much progress in many ways on that. So I will address the amendments I bring forward in Group 16, which speak to a single foundational principle, that those who teach, support and lead learning in our schools and colleges must have a central voice in shaping how we inspect and improve our education system. This has been commented on by many teacher leaders, including representatives of the teaching trade unions. Amendments 29 and 81 establish that inspection process. Its design, structure and practical application must be developed in genuine consultation with the representatives of teachers and college teaching staff. This is not an optional courtesy, it is a necessity, because we have heard time and time again that there has been a profound breakdown in the trust between the profession and those charged with inspecting and evaluating it. The Muir report, putting learners at the centre, was clear in its critique of Education Scotland's dual role and its failure to engage meaningfully with the teaching profession. That report was underpinned by the testimony of over 5,000 voices across Scottish education, and one of its clearest messages was that teachers and practitioners felt unheard. We must take that message seriously, and these amendments are about creating an inspection system that teachers can trust, not by lowering expectations, but by listening, really listening, to the profession. Because when we fail to engage with those at the chalk face, we don't just alienate them, we impoverish our understanding of what is really happening in our schools and colleges. These are not meaningless amendments. These amendments mean a great deal to the people that are engaged in teaching. In the Stage 2 proceedings, I raised the issue that top-down models of inspection often miss the local contextual knowledge that classroom teachers and college lecturers possess. That argument is not abstract. It is grounded in the evidence of what went wrong with previous models. The OECD report made a related point when it criticised the lack of robust feedback mechanisms between policy and practice. There is no point in inspecting a system if the process does not learn from the professionals delivering it. Amendments 30, 38, 39 and 236 go further. They provide an annual structured mechanism by which teachers and lecturers can make recommendations on how inspections are conducted. The Chief Inspector will then be required either to act on those recommendations or to explain in writing why not. This creates not only a pathway for a practitioner influence, but a safeguard against indifference. If we are serious about building a system based on mutual respect and continuous improvement, and I think the opposition parties in this place certainly are serious about building such a system, then the voices of teachers cannot be included as an afterthought. They must be embedded in the very architecture of the inspection, and these amendments do just that. We know from our debates on this bill and from the reports we have all studied that there has been a cultural failure at the heart of Scottish education governance, and that failure was characterised by centralisation, opacity and an unwillingness to hear difficult truths from the profession. These amendments offer us a legislative opportunity to change that. They will promote a culture of collaboration, one in which inspections are not seen as external judgments imposed from on high, but as part of a shared endeavour to raise standards for all learners. Indeed, this collaborative approach is not only fairer, it is more effective. Research consistently shows that systems improve most when those within them feel ownership over the process of reform. A system designed with teachers will work better than one designed for them. We also need to consider morale. As we saw in recent surveys from the NASUWT and the EIS, Scottish teachers are under enormous pressure. Verbal abuse, physical assault, dwindling support staff and ever-shifting expectations are taking their toll. And amidst all of this, the least that we can do is ensure that inspection is something done with teachers, not done to them. And we can't forget our colleagues in the college sector. With reforms proposed by the Withers Review and major transformations in post-school learning delivery, college lecturers are facing immense structural and pedagogical, I have a problem with that word, thank you, change. I should have said teaching, shouldn't I? It is vital that the inspection process in further education listens to and reflects their experience as well. These amendments are not complicated. They are practical. They set in statute a process of annual consultation, transparency and reasoned response. They make it clear that inspection cannot ignore the views of those whose work it evaluates. Some may say this is merely procedural. I would argue the opposite. This is cultural. It's foundational. This is about whether we build an education system rooted in partnership or in prescription. These amendments answer that question, and I urge all members to support them.
Thank you. I now call on Ross Greer to speak to Amendment 234 and other amendments in the group. Mr Greer.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. 234 is a simple amendment. It clarifies under Section 36(4) the Chief Inspector is only required to consult with such persons as they consider appropriate, allowing this to be fulfilled by just consulting with a reasonable cohort of the groups referenced in that section. So it eliminates any potential ambiguity and any suggestion that they must, for example, consult with a representative of every school in Scotland. We passed similar amendments to this relevant to other sections yesterday, so I would hope that this isn't particularly controversial. And Amendment 239 is the same clarification applied to the provision for ministers to consult. There is no need in either case for them to consult with a representative of every school unless they believe that is necessary. There will be many occasions where they simply need to consult with a sample to get a representative view of Scotland.
Thank you. I now call on Pam Duncan-Glancy to speak to Amendment 235 and other amendments in the group. Ms Duncan-Glancy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I speak in support of many of the amendments in this group, not least some of the ones that Stephen Kerr has referred to. But I'm also, I think that teacher input into the inspectorate is incredibly important, and we've seen through various different reports and various different experiences that there hasn't always been enough, and that causes huge fear in staff that work in schools and in particular for teachers, and so that's why this is important. Amendment 235 in my name would require the Chief Inspector, when preparing the annual inspection plan, to consult people and organisations who represent those most directly affected by inspection: teachers, support staff, school leaders and, where appropriate, learners and parents. By listening at the planning stage, the Inspectorate can target its visits, its methodologies and its follow-up support to the realities of classrooms and staff rooms, not simply to a timetable set centrally. Complementing that, Amendment 240 in my name places a similar duty on Scottish ministers. When ministers draft regulations that may alter how often the inspection plan is reviewed, they should also consult the representatives of those who work and learn and who are impacted most closely by inspection. That ensures any future adjustment to frequency is informed by professional experience and by the impact on learners. Both amendments respond directly to evidence heard in the Stage 1 committee and highlighted in the report, where teachers, unions and parent groups asked for earlier, clearer engagement in inspection policy. Neither amendment limits ministerial or inspectorate discretion. They simply guarantee that decisions are made with, not for, the people who deliver and experience education every day. Presiding Officer, consultation at the right time improves policy, builds trust and ultimately supports better outcomes for young people. I therefore move Amendment 235 and ask members to support Amendment 42. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call the Cabinet Secretary to speak to Amendment 240A and other amendments in the group. Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, before I begin today, I just want to briefly reference Group 15 amendments which were debated last night, and I have committed to members to place on the record my intention to engage with the GTCS, COSLA and other appropriate partners on issues relating to the oversight of safeguarding and child protection systems. I have already written to COSLA on the 13th of June about this, and it is my intention that the Education and Childcare Assurance Board will discuss these issues at their meeting in September, but the Government is keen and willing to use our convening power to identify and address any remaining information sharing challenges in relation to child protection with partners, including the GTCS. And I'm very open to member suggestions in this space, and I hope that will provide reassurance to Mr Rennie, Mr Greer, Mr Briggs and others who have an interest in this space. I have strong reservations in Group 16, Presiding Officer, in relation to Mr Kerr's amendments 29 and 30, which seek to require the Chief Inspector to co-design inspections. Now, Amendment 29 would appear to require each individual inspection to be designed separately. Now, while of course every inspection is different and they will be tailored to meet the specific context of that establishment, there is still a need for there to be a degree of consistency in how establishments are actually inspected. And in addition, it will be extremely resource intensive, and this amendment would risk having consistent approaches which are fair and equitable across all inspections. However, I am very supportive of the views of stakeholders helping to inform the overall approach to inspections, and indeed the bill as currently drafted will enable that by way of consultation with the Advisory Council and other groups in preparation of the inspection plan. At an individual inspection level, though, I believe the manner in which that inspection is conducted should be a matter for the Chief Inspector. We wouldn't want a situation to arise whereby a school is able to avoid inspection of an area of risk or of weakness by removing it from the inspection remit through that co-design process. Now, Mr Kerr's Amendment 30 would require the design of inspections to be reviewed every single year, in consultation with a considerable number of interested persons, even where all parties are content that the model of inspection is working well. This amendment would further create a presumption that the Chief Inspector will accept any recommendations made by consultees regarding the design of inspections. So, whereby such recommendations were wholly inappropriate for inspections, and they did not accord with the views of the rest of the consultees, the Chief Inspector would still be required to provide a written response, unduly taking up their time, which could be better used carrying out inspections. So I therefore cannot agree with Mr Kerr's amendments, with one exception. I will do.
Stephen Kerr.
So I just asked the Cabinet Secretary then, on what basis do we change the cultural outlook that the profession often has, perhaps most often has, about inspection as a process? If we don't engage with teachers and there isn't a collaborative approach to inspections, how does that culture change?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Mr Kerr and I debated this at length at stage 2, and I would argue that the bill does put in place measures in relation
Can we have
to
the
building
microphone?
in relation to building that collaborative approach. And I talked about, for example, the consultation with the Advisory Council and also with other groups in preparation of the inspection plan. So my view is that the bill, as currently drafted, does make provision in that regard. I do accept the member's points in relation to culture and the way in which teachers in particular experience inspection. But I do have an exception in relation to his amendments, and that is Amendment 236, which would require the Chief Inspector, when preparing the inspection plan, to consult with such persons who are representative of registered teachers and college teaching staff representatives after the Chief Inspector considers appropriate. And I'm happy to support this amendment. I believe it represents the best way of addressing Mr Kerr's general concern in this group, which is to ensure that teachers and college staff are suitably involved in inspection design. I'm also happy to support Mr Greer's amendments, which refine important consultation duties, which were inserted at stage 2. On Amendment 235, I hope to reassure Ms Duncan-Glancy that the existing provisions in this section, providing that the Chief Inspector must consult with such other persons as they consider appropriate, would suitably catch those whose interests are not the interests of educational establishments. And on that basis, and with the addition of the category of registered teachers and college teaching staff from Mr Kerr's Amendment 236, I believe it is unnecessary to include this additional provision in the bill. With regards to Ms Duncan-Glancy's Amendment 240, I think it is important that we make clear ministers do not have to consult with every person who is considered representative of a group. I have therefore, with her support, lodged Amendment 240A to adjust this, and would urge members to support both amendments.
Thank you, Stephen Kerr. To wind up, press or withdraw Amendment 29. Mr Kerr.
Deputy Presiding Officer, I don't have any further comments to make. I'm grateful for the very positive response, I think, from the Cabinet Secretary. Grateful that she has indeed taken on board the principles that underpin some of my amendments at least, and therefore I move Amendment 29.
The question is that Amendment 29 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. Parliament's not agreed. There will be a division. As this is the first division of the stage process, I suspend for around 5 minutes to allow members to access the digital voting.